Welcome to the Haunted Hangover podcast. I'm Louie, and as always, I'm joined by my bud Dave.
Hey.
And we're joined by a special guest, Lucé, from It's Always Halloween podcast. Welcome to the show, Lucé.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, gentlemen. I'm happy to be here.
It's a pleasure.
Oh, I thank you.
So before we get into today's topic, tell us a little bit about the It's Always Halloween podcast.
My pleasure. So It's Always Halloween is a year-round Halloween podcast. It is a deep dive into Halloween history. So it is just me. I do a fully researched podcast where it's not just the internet. I read scholarly articles, I read books, and I put together basically a deep dive episode. But they're short little bite-sized episodes. So they're anywhere from 7 minutes to 20 minutes on a topic. And right now I'm about to start a brand new chapter on witches, which is going to be probably cover about 5 to 7 episodes. And then along with that, I do a weekly call-in episode that is a little more laid back and chatty, where people can call the All Hallows hotline and leave messages about like their Halloween memories, if they need any advice, if they've got good like costume ideas, if they have like recommendations for movies or books. And they can also write in. So it's kind of like a curated episode of like calls and letters and a little bit more chattiness. So it's 2 episodes a week, 1 history, and then 1 laid back, kind of community centered one.
This show is always laid back, so.
I know, it makes it sound like my other one's like very tense. It's not. I'm a comedian also, so the history episodes are, I can't help myself. There's lots of jokes in it as well. So it's not, it's not like school. I promise you, it's fun.
Honestly, I give you a lot of props. Your show is super informative, and it's like,
Aww.
it's great to have a show that teaches you so much when it comes to like the holiday of Halloween. Like you just learn so much. There's things I learned from listening to your show like that I had no idea, but like I had no clue that's what went into specific aspects of Halloween. Like you recently did an entire show, I think, on the Beastle, the
Yes.
old school like Halloween decorations, and it was like super informative. I was like, wow, I'm impressed. This is awesome.
Thank you. There's so much stuff out there that I don't think people have really researched before, and like the connection that I found between Denison and Beastle, their whole thing, they essentially are the reason we celebrate Halloween the way that we do. There were not Halloween decorations before those 2 companies. And like, they are like the orange and the black, and they're the ones who created the modern image of the witch and the skeleton. So we owe them like a debt of gratitude to basically change. That's the Halloween we have because of them. So that was a really fascinating dive.
Yeah, if you love Halloween, you definitely have to check out the show. It's, again, a lot of props because
thank you so much.
I could tell you put a lot of work into your show, and it's again very impressive.
Thank you. Well, I'm a little Lisa Simpson my whole life. I've always been like, why? I want to know why. And so I just pick topics and things that I'm like, why do we do this? I love traditions. I love parties. I love everything that has to do with Halloween. But there's an extent where I'm just like, we just do this every year. But like, where did all this stuff come from? Why are we doing this? You know?
And when it comes to Halloween, like, what is it about the holiday that's important to you? Why is it so special to you?
Well, I think with Halloween, there's always that connection to childhood. And I have just loved it since I was a little girl. I can't remember a time where I wasn't obsessed with it. And you can see looking at pictures of me as like a 2 or a 3-year-old in my costumes where I look just as like insanely gleeful as I do as an adult. I'm just like, I'm doing it. I think that life is like very drab. Like the world is beautiful and interesting, and other people are interesting, but day-to-day life is very rote. And I love holidays in general because it feels like this opportunity to break free from like the normal things you're doing all the time. And then Halloween especially, like it's all about being scared and about things being ugly and strange and outside of the norm. And I think life actually is really ugly and strange and bizarre, but people are constantly trying to tamp it down and act like we're all very normal, which is absurd. So Halloween feels like the truth to me, you know? And so I feel like when it's Halloween, it's like, yes, the world is bizarre and absurd and nothing makes sense and people are ugly and mean sometimes. And like, let's just show it. you know?
It's very true.
And it's silly. It's fun too, you know?
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. On my photography website, I have different categories of the kind of photos that I take, and the more like kind of fucking weird, like bizarro photos that I take, it's called "The World is Strange and There's Pain All Around." That's what I call that.
Yes.
That's like that specific type of, because it's true.
Mm-hmm. And it
not
doesn't
everything
benefit
is
us
amazing.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't benefit anyone to be like, it's great, everything's good, very good, good. That creates a divide between people. We're like not able to connect when we act like everything's fine, because that's like a lie. It puts a wall between all of us.
I love that. I love that you put it that way.
And I like that one thing you just said, like saying that the real life is kind of scary, and Halloween is like the time of year where everyone can be scary, and it's kind of, there's like a fantasy element to it, and how most people that love Halloween like us can kind of use the holiday to kind of forget about all that nonsense. It's like, and I think we've mentioned that, Dave and I have talked about it, how it's an escape, and it's kind of not even an escape, but more so you feel like that's your month, or months, because we say Halloween kind of starts in September all year round technically for us, but it it just feels like the norm, you know, during that time of the year. And again, you can escape to a haunt or decorate your house or your apartment to look like there's a zombie on the lawn. That's always what I use, a zombie on your lawn. Yeah. Like, that's normal, you know? So, and one other thing I want to touch on, Lucé, I know you're a filmmaker as well, and you and I have that in common.
That's true.
And I know you, it's hard. I think I watched actually one of your shorts. I think you sent it to me a few months ago.
Oh, Messed Up.
Yeah, and it's horror specifically, right?
Yeah, it's a horror comedy.
Horror. Mm-hmm. Yeah, talk about that a little bit.
Yes, I love Messed Up. It's actually a horror comedy because my background is also, as I said, I'm a comedian. I've been doing stand-up for 10 years, but I've also been a lifelong horror lover, and it's my favorite genre because, again, I think that the world is absurd, and I love the mashup of, like, the terror of the real world and how absurd that terror is at the same time. And I don't love horror that's super serious because I can't. I think even the worst things that have happened to me, I can't get through them without laughing. And so watching like a 2-hour extremely serious horror movie, I'm just like, these people need to lighten up. So Messed Up is about a woman who lives in a very messy apartment. And when a serial killer breaks in, it's the only thing standing between her and his rampage. So it's got a slapstick element. It's like very inspired by, you know, classic slasher home invasion type movies because my biggest fear is being murdered. And it really just came out of being kind of a messy person, not dirty as much as a stacker. I love physical media. I love, you know, toys, books, all kinds of, I'm sure the same stuff that your listeners collect. But I've always lived in the city, so I don't have a lot of space. So there's stacks of cool shit everywhere. I'm a maximalist.
I can relate really well to this because my room
both of us can.
Books, cassettes, records, and VHS stacks everywhere.
Yes, oh my God. Do we live in the same house? Are you under one of my stacks and I didn't know it?
We might.
The struggle is real when it comes to collecting things,
right? So
and you don't have a lot of space.
Yes, so I've always fantasized because I'm like, well, I'm not great with hand-to-hand combat that I know of. I've never been under pressure, but my place is kind of a fun maze, and I could get out, and another person might get trapped. So that's essentially like it's like a mousetrap with junk.
It's so true. Because you know how to maneuver around everything because you're used to being in this dwelling space where, okay, this is here, this is there, and then you know how to get around it. But other people are like, how do you get around this?
Right, and I know where everything is. I'm always like, it's a delicate system. Like, I can find everything. It's not really a mess. I love it. I find it comforting. Not in like a mental illness kind of way. Bless those people. That is a difficult life. But like, I know, I could see the floor. I know where things are. I don't have newspapers from the 70s.
I am very happy you just said all this because that's exactly how I feel about it.
I love that we
organized chaos.
Yes.
That's exactly what it is. Organized chaos.
It soothes me. Like I hate that minimalism has been such a trend over the last 10 years. I think it is absolutely absurd and such a weird thing to brag about. Like, I own nothing. It's like something only rich people can say. You know, if you're poor, you don't want to brag about not having anything. So rich people are like, I have nothing. I'm amazing. But I think that's so, I don't know, it's so bland. It's boring. There's not, when I go to someone's house, there's nothing to look at. I'm like, okay, well, what's going on in your life? Like, there's nothing to start a conversation about. Do you like anything?
100%.
So
100%.
So I made a movie about that, all of that, and it's a horror movie.
So since we all have a love for Halloween and movies, I thought it would be fun for us to each pick a Halloween scene from a non-Halloween movie or a spooky scene that fits Halloween, because Dave usually chooses something out of the ordinary.
That's my MO, so...
For me, it's just, I've always loved when a movie that isn't necessarily horror has a Halloween scene in it, because it shows how important the holiday is in pop culture. So just seeing like a random Halloween scene pop up in a drama or a comedy is just always cool to me. Do you guys get as excited as I do when it comes to Halloween scenes in movies?
It's thrilling. Because it's like a treat. It's like if you bite into something and you don't know it's going to have peanut butter in it. You know, if you're like, this is regular chocolate, and then it's like, no, it's chocolate with peanut butter. Like, it's just so thrilling.
That's a good example. It's like, you know what? I think I can use a good example. When we covered Over the Garden Wall, when I was watching that, and again, spoiler alert, I'm going to give it a few seconds. Stop listening if you haven't seen it.
Skip ahead.
Okay. When I was watching that, and I finally saw, like, the episode before the last takes place on Halloween, I was just, like, crazy. I was like, holy shit.
Brilliant.
I was like, this is what?
An incredible reveal.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
What, like, a splendid way to throw in one of the, the best day ever. Well, it's actually Devil's Night, but still.
Well, because you think you're watching, like... You know you're watching a bizarre world, then that world is real, but you think they're a part of it, but then turns out they're not actually a part of that. They're a part of the real world, and they're just wearing Halloween costume. It's brilliant. I'm obsessed with that show. I watched that, and I was like, was this made just for me?
Yo, so good. I love when I meet people that love it, because I haven't met that many people. I shouldn't say that. I haven't come across that many people that love Over the Garden Wall. So it's so nice to see that you love it too.
Oh, I wish everything was Over the Garden Wall. Do you guys have stuff like that you love, where you're just like, what if there wasn't any new things and everything that came out was just this one thing that I love?
Listen, I didn't know what Over the Garden Wall was until Dave recommended it, which is crazy that it completely just passed me by. Like, I didn't know it existed. So when we watched it, and like the big reveal is it's set on Halloween, even though you can't tell throughout the entire film, except for that one episode with the jack-o'-lanterns.
Right, it's more so fall themed than it is.
But when that reveal happens, again, mind blowing. You're like, oh shit, they almost died on Halloween, and that's what's going on right now. So
it's so cool. Yep. I used to be a nanny for a long time when I moved to LA, and one of the girls that I took care of was like, do you like Over the Garden Wall? She's like 6.
That's amazing.
And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. Most of the time, I don't know how many kids are in your life, but kids will recommend things to you and you're like, oh, blow my brains out. Like, I don't want to watch your dumb shit. But like this, I was like, okay, I'll humor her. Cause she's like, you love Halloween. It's about Halloween. I was like, sure, I bet. And we watch it though. And I'm like, I'm like, shut up. We're watching. And I just like forced this child to watch it with me for like the entire time we were together.
You're indebted to this child now.
Oh, I am. I was like, this is my favorite thing. And I was also like, this is terrifying. I could not have watched this when I was 6. The beast, like the eyes, like so scary. And
that's
they're
heavy
just
shit
like,
for a kid.
Oh my God. I couldn't handle Watership Down as a kid.
Oh, yeah,
I don't know how
that's
a brutal one too. Holy shit.
So Lucé, since you're our guest, hit us with your first pick.
Aren't you scared, little boy? I'm going to drink your blood.
You're not a real vampire. Those teeth don't frighten me.
How about these?
Hey, how'd you do that?
Dentures. Lost my pearlies in the war.
Okay, I had a really difficult time with this. You guys know I sent you like 3 options, and I whittled it down to Ed Wood by Tim Burton, starring Johnny Depp, Martin Landau, Sarah Jessica Parker. Everybody is in this movie. Patricia Arquette. I haven't watched this movie since I was a kid, actually, and I rewatched it in preparation for this, and this is one of the greatest movies ever made. Like, I did not appreciate it, I don't think, when I was younger. And now, after living in LA and working on my own short films, I'm just like, oh, this is the movie about filmmaking and monsters. So it's got a creepy vibe. It's not a Halloween movie, but it's got a really good, sort of like Over the Garden Wall, where you're like, ooh, this is atmospheric, you know? So I think it would be good, the whole movie, during Halloween. But it's got this incredible scene where Ed Wood is sitting with Bela Lugosi, who plays, Dracula in the classic monster movies. And they've befriended each other, and they're hanging out on Halloween night watching Dracula, his movie, on Vampira's monster show. And it's so great. The scene opens up like with kids running across the street in their trick-or-treating costumes. And there's a witch, a ghost, and a cowboy, which like, it just is beyond classic, you know? And then it goes to them watching the scene, and then they're sort of teasing each other. They're talking about how hot Vampira is. And then there's a really great scene where Bela Lugosi tries to scare the kids who come trick-or-treating. And it's just, I mean, can you imagine trick-or-treating and then like a horror icon opens the door? Like you're at Robert Englund's door, you know, like when we were kids, that's essentially the same. Like,
it's like, hey.
Oh my gosh.
What I love about that scene is at this point, like Bela Lugosi is like retired and no one takes him serious except for Ed Wood.
Adores
and the
him.
whole plot of the film is him making these really low budget films and like kind of failing because they're all terrible. If you know about Ed, I love Ed Wood, like the film Ed Wood, and I love Ed Wood as a filmmaker, like the actual person. But like no one at this point takes Bela Lugosi serious. And these kids, like you mentioned, the trick-or-treaters knock on the door, and you see Bela Lugosi like get all excited, stand up, run over, grab his cape, throw it on over his shoulders. He like opens the door. He's got the fangs on, raises his arms like with the cape, and the kids are like, "What the fuck?" They're not even scared of him.
Like one runs away, and the other ones are like, "Okay, buddy."
The one kid, yes, the one kid is like just standing there, like, "You're not scary, dude." And then I love how Ed Wood. I forget. I think he lost his teeth.
Yeah, because he was
army.
he was in the war and in World War II. So he has some fake teeth along his front of his mouth.
He's got fake teeth, and he pulls them out, and the kid like. I love how that's what scares him, not the dude that is Dracula. So it's just a great scene.
It's so great because the Bela Lugosi is like, "How did you do that?" And he explains. He's like, "Oh, I love it." Like they're like playing off of each other, and it's so fun because when the scene you're talking about where he like pulls on the cape, he goes, "I love children." It's such a hilarious scene. And I love the idea of this man just being so like, that's me in that scene where I love giving kids candy on trick-or-treating, and like scaring them though is my ultimate, but because I love them, I want to scare them, you know?
It's like, look kid, this'll toughen you up if I run out wearing like scary makeup or like a scary mask, like this will toughen you up on Halloween.
Pop out. You think I'm coming out the door, but I'm coming out the window, you know?
So just to touch on what you were saying, how you love to scare kids on Halloween or scare people on Halloween, something that I mean, I don't really do it anymore because we don't get a lot of trick-or-treaters where I live. And I know I mentioned this before on the show, but I live in a very weird block where it's half industrial, half suburbia. So there's like maybe 5 trick-or-treaters at most. But one year, I had a group of kids, probably like 9 or 10, and the kid just comes up to me and he just opens his bag, and I said, "What do you say?" And he didn't say trick or treat, and I'm like, are you serious? He wouldn't say it. And I don't
He
think he knew
wouldn't?
what, like, I don't think he knew it. Like, I don't think, like he was,
No.
like, aware of that's the, you know, that, like, this is the tradition. You say trick or treat if you want candy. And he's just, like, looked mad at me because I'm trying to tell him, say trick or treat.
You're not doing
No
it
trick
right.
or treat, no candy.
I just fucking left I just gave the kid candy. But nowadays, I just leave a plate of candy on the steps. And I usually write some weird note just to make them, you know, just to offset the beautiful day a little bit, just to have them be like, what? But
You're being watched.
one thing that I like about that scene is when he's doing a little hand movement, and he's like, and then Johnny Depp's Ed Wood's like mimicking him, and he's like, how do you do that? He goes, you got to be double jointed and Hungarian.
And Hungarian. That's such a great scene. I really feel like it shows how their French, because it's in the beginning of their friendship, and so it's showing like how much love Ed Wood has for him, how much he admires him, and just like how comfortable and close they are together. Like they're really made for each other, and I think that this Halloween scene shows that. And I think that's true in real life. Like when you find somebody that you can bond over the intricacies of horror and Halloween, like it's almost like a soul connection,
Yeah.
you know, where you're like, I know you.
100%.
And going back to that, like the just the setup of the scene, I love how it's just the two of them sitting on his couch, and the only light, if I remember correctly, is coming from the TV. So it just
Yes.
reminds me of like being a kid and like watching
Absolutely.
like Monster Vision or something like that late at night on Halloween or around Halloween, or just watching a horror film. Like you never turn the lights on. You just sit there
No.
in the darkness watching a horror film on Halloween. Like it's just like Tim Burton, like he captured that setup and that atmosphere perfectly.
Perfectly. I agree.
Yeah, it's really good.
Well, and I should mention too, for our listeners who haven't seen it, it's in black and white to recall, you know, Ed Wood's films. And so, and it's beautifully shot, and the grading is really incredible and sharp. And so the way that the TV hits their faces, like, and some of them are in the shadows. And so it has that feeling, which I think is really magical on and around Halloween, where everything is scary. Like everything feels a little scarier, like anything could happen at any moment. And I love the, like, always movies within movies are really fun to me as well. And I think that what's great about a Halloween scene in a movie is when they can capture what it is like to celebrate Halloween. You know, it's not just the imagery. Anybody can put imagery and costumes in movies. And I think we've probably all seen things where you're like, that was fun, but it's not giving me that feeling,
Yes,
you know?
yes.
And this is like capturing the Halloween essence of like, because this is in high school, my friends and I would watch horror movies on Halloween together. And I was just, even if it was just one of us, just like that, where you're like curled up, you got a blanket on, you're in a corner, everything feels extra scary, and like the doorbell rings and it's terrifying.
So, you know what? I actually want to ask you a question. So when you were in high school, you weren't living in LA, right?
No, I grew up outside of Cleveland,
Okay.
Ohio.
So I'm very curious as to how Halloween was as a teenager for you during that time period.
Oh, I loved it. So we got a ton of trick-or-treaters in our neighborhood. And so the first few years after I trick-or-treated all the way through 8th grade. So I was 14. So freshman year when I was 15, I didn't trick-or-treat anymore. But my friends, we all came over and we do really scary, like bloody makeup. And we do this whole scene in our front yard and then scare children. And then we watch
Awesome.
movies after. Yeah, it was
Okay.
ideal. We used to count how many kids we could make scream and how many kids we could make cry, and then we'd try to win. Whoever could do it the most, everybody would keep track of the amount of kids they freaked out.
Right.
And then somebody would like win, and then we'd buy them something, and
So-
it was like a little contest.
The reason why I ask is because I feel demographically it's different in different regions, where we are. So it's like, for me, and I know I said it many a times, like, there's a lot of bad kids around. So there was all these fucking punk kids running around. You know, we were getting into fights with people. We were not fights, not like fist fights, but like
Okay.
like wars, like with like eggs and shaving cream. There was bad kids driving around egging people. That's how it was over here. Like, it wasn't like, yes, there was your typical kids out trick or treating and whatnot, but we had that element too. And,
wow.
I was just kind of curious, like, maybe if that was a thing where you were. So,
not in Elyria, Ohio. I mean, not in my section of Elyria, not on the north side of Elyria.
Okay.
That's stuff I always saw on TV, and I was like, we don't do that. And maybe there were some kids doing that, but I loved Halloween, so I never wanted to be shitty on Halloween. I don't know. Do you know what I mean? But I was like, I like everything that I'm doing. If I could, I talk about this on my podcast where I'm like, I don't think there should be an age limit to trick-or-treating. If I could have trick-or-treated through high school, I would have.
We still did.
That's what I said recently.
Man, my mom would not allow it. My mom was so strict if teenagers would come to the door unless they had a really good costume and they were really committed to it.
That's fair.
But that's what I'm like, come on. There's people who would not want to do it at certain ages. It's not like there wouldn't be anyone at home to give out candy, like some people just wouldn't do it. So let there not be an age limit. You can do it or not do it. Just like, have fun. I don't think rules and restrictions are good for Halloween.
So one last, and listen, I know Louie already told you I go off on tangents, and this is what I'm doing right now. So
I love them on my favorite topic. I could do this all day. This is a 5-hour podcast, right?
It might be. So it goes back to what you were saying about, or what we were talking about, of how the world isn't this amazing place and how people use Halloween to escape. But at the same time, it just kind of doubles down sometimes as the world being, the fucked up place, because people are just going to be extra fucked up doing the stuff that I was telling you. You know what I mean? It's I don't know. It's interesting to think about.
There are assholes that can ruin it for the rest of us. So.
Right. But I'm saying that will be extra shitty that they're already shitty. So, and the one last thing I'm going to ask is, was Devil's Night a thing for you? Or is it a thing?
It's a thing that I heard about. It's not a thing that we did that I know of, but I know a lot of people who did that in Ohio, and because I'm only about an hour and a half from Detroit, so it's like I knew that was a thing. In a lot of my Michigan friends grew up doing that, and I went to school in Toledo, so people were into it in Toledo because it's just over the border from Detroit.
Right.
So
I just the whole aspect of it being a thing, especially just being an hour away, or like it's just so wild to me that it's crazy.
I actually did a whole episode called Halloween Eve that I released on Halloween Eve since Friday night. My episodes come out on Fridays, Tuesdays and Fridays. So it was all about how actually all throughout the country there are different names for that night, and some places call it Goosey Night.
Never heard that. Love it.
Yeah, and I did, but I did a whole episode called Halloween Eve that if people want to, they can check out, and I could send to you guys, where people were calling in talking about the different nights.
I need to hear that one.
Yeah, and it was really interesting because I had just thought Devil's Night was Detroit and Toledo, and so it was cool to hear it be called different things. Mischief Night in certain places.
Night, yeah, those are the two big ones.
Yeah, and I saw a map recently that was inaccurate. That was like, oh, they only do it in this part of the country, and I was like, no, I deep dove this, and there's pockets. There's weird little pockets because there was stuff in like Colorado. I think it's like people move, right? So like a family is like, I'm from Detroit or I'm from Jersey, and they move and then they take it to like their new place. And so that's really how Halloween traditions has happened, is they've just been moved across the world and like dispersed to where those people disperse to. It's really fascinating how cultures blossom like that. But yeah, I never did anything like that on Halloween. I did have my pumpkin stolen as a kid and smashed, and that devastated me. I was probably like 6 or 7, and they smashed our jack-o'-lanterns in the street, and it was just like, oh, I was like, why would you do this?
Horrible children that exist.
Devastated. I think it's one thing to
would.
get in a fight with other people, or be like you were saying, like, or it's like teens throwing eggs, or even toilet papering is an annoying thing, but you can clean it up. But to wreck other people's property, I think is really disgusting and selfish, because it's like you can get into some shenanigans, but like,
it's terrible.
Don't fuck things up for children. That's my thing. The line is at children
true.
For me.
It does. It does mess up things for kids. It does.
I recently on our Q&A show, someone submitted a question asking like if we ever did anything like that, like egg houses, TP trees and cars and stuff. And I said, it's just mean-spirited. Like,
Yes.
I never did it. Dave did. There's a difference there, but I just was like,
You're
why
like, I
would you
can't help
want to
it.
like hurt someone's
what can I
feelings
say?
or like look, kids, you want to egg each other, TP each other, go for it. Just leave
Yeah.
your jack-o'-lanterns alone.
But,
leave
like,
the decorations alone. Don't
was,
fuck with those
that was
things.
a part of it. Like, it was part of the Halloween for us. Like, it didn't matter. Yes, we went trick-or-treating, but we were also going out egging. Like, that was always part of the agenda. Like, it didn't matter any year.
Did you egg people you knew?
Yeah, look. I'm gonna let me rephrase. We weren't like going around egging random kids. No, it was between like us, but there were people though doing that. That's what I'm trying to say. Is
Right,
like my
I
group
got
of friends.
you.
We were being malicious to each other.
Right.
we were going out and bullying other people, but there were other people going out and doing that. And what I'm saying is, I know I brought it up before. There was one kid that he was driving around in his car and he had a convertible and he was really wrecking kids with eggs, and
What
it
an
was
Wow.
yeah, it was horrible. So like we had people like that. So like I was saying, trick or treating, all kinds of that, all of that was always part of the agenda, but also egging, shaving cream, toilet paper, mischief was part of it too. That's just went hand in hand with us. Maybe it's just again a regional thing, like where we are, but like that's what it was for us.
It's tricks. That's the other part of that's
Yeah.
trick or treat.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Tricks.
I don't think you're wrong. I think that pranks can be fun when everyone's like consenting. Even everyone's like, yeah, let's get crazy together. Let's like fuck with each other. I just don't like it when it's like, surprise, you're not involved. I don't like being pranked personally, but I would get into pranking another person. But so I'm always like, don't prank me, don't fuck with me. Like it's gonna freak me out too much. I don't like it. But I think if it's like, something people want to do together. But you're right. There's assholes in the world. The world has darkness. So of course there's going to be that asshole element to Halloween, just like there's the asshole element to Christmas, where people are like, this is a great time to steal things from people. The darkness of our world is what allows the lightness of our world. And, you want everyone to be operating at their best. It's an impossible thing to control, but we get to enjoy the good parts so much more because we know how awful things can be. So I don't know. I try to look at it like that because we can't control the chaotic element of our society. It's always going to be there.
Very well said.
Every day, on every street, in every city, women are insulted, abused, threatened.
Santa, what's the matter?
What's the matter with you?
So my pick is the 1981 film Ms. 45. This was directed by Abel Ferrara. He directed movies like King of New York, Bad Lieutenant, The Driller Killer. I don't know if you guys know that one.
Real king in New York City sleeves.
Yeah.
He really
he loves.
is.
I think he's from New York, so all of his
I think
films
he is. I'm pretty sure he's
take place in New York City.
a native New Yorker.
Being from New York, I've always loved his movies, and this is probably one of my favorite films of his. So before I go into my favorite Halloween scene from this movie, I'll give you guys a quick, brief synopsis because the movie is pretty dark and fucked up. So basically, in a nutshell, the movie's about a mute seamstress by the name of Thana. She's brutally raped twice heading home from work. And in the process, she kills one of these rapists and takes his .45 caliber pistol and begins a killing spree of her own, killing several men in the process. You don't know if these guys are complete garbage or not. Some of them are obviously terrible people, but as you're watching the film, she starts to kind of lose track of her own reasons behind doing this and kind of starts just murdering people. Again, very dark subject, this entire movie. But it all culminates at a Halloween party at the end, and that's what I'm specifically going to talk about. So, real quick though, I do want to recommend this movie if you haven't seen it. If you're easily offended, with certain subject matter, maybe stay away from it. But I think it's a well-crafted movie. It's very well made.
It is.
Exploitation of the time, 1981. New York looks like complete shit, like what it used to look like. And I think it's a good representation of what New York was, and like the whole like garment district and, Lower East Side and just New York when it was very gritty.
Yeah, I want to say one thing. I'm pretty sure Abel Ferreira is one of the rapists in the movie.
Is he?
I'm pretty sure he's one of them, yeah. And also, it's kind of tragic what happened to the actress Zoe Lund, because she died of heart problems, I think, due to a lot of drug use.
Yeah, she was
That's
a
what I was
massive
just-
cocaine and heroin addict,
Yeah.
I think. It's pretty dark shit.
I want to say too about the rape scenes. I don't love rape revenge. I love the idea of rape revenge movies. I find them very difficult to watch. But what I really like about this movie is I don't think that it is. A lot of movies from that time really you were like, wait, is this pro or anti-rape? Like, like the camera would be really into the rape scene where you're just like, yuck. And I think that they do Frere does such a great job in this while it is an exploitation film, there's nothing that's like sexy about the rape scenes at all.
No.
And it really, I think he is kind of aware of that when he's making the film. And it's more about her and her experience and her, shifting and
Of course.
fighting back. And I think that that's really important. And while this might not be for, anybody who has trouble watching rape scenes, I don't think it's offensive in the way that some other movies from that time period are, where you're like, why are you making this thing? Like the camera looks like it's enjoying it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree. There are a lot of like rape revenge movies that are just exploiting
For shock
rape
value.
and shock value.
It's definitely not
Yeah.
shock value.
No, because when I could compare that, I feel like a movie I could compare this to is Taxi Driver, because early on she's very sympathetic. You're like, this girl has snapped and she's not taking shit anymore, and any skeezy, sleazy, horrible men that are kind of creeping on women and just doing terrible things to people, she's gonna kill. But as you watch the movie, you realize, not all, there's a lot of innocent people too, that she's kind of so fucked up in the head from what happened to her that she's just lost and doesn't know. And that's what I like about the movie.
I agree. I think it does a great job of showing the ripples that violence against women causes to society, how it's not just like a singular experience. Rape and domestic violence is a cultural problem. And I actually think it's it does an incredible job of showing that. I think she remains sympathetic until the end, but it's so sad. It's sad for everybody.
Yeah, that's kind of what I think is what's great about it. It's by the end you're just kind of like, why? So
Years ago, I composed music about this movie. It's called, and the song title is called "I Am Always With You." And the whole point of it is that trauma is always with you. And that's kind of, for me, the gist of this movie is no matter what, she was going to be haunted by this entire experience until the day she's dead. And that's kind of how I always looked at this film, as just something that is just so terrible, like something so terrible can happen to somebody. And it doesn't even have to be something as extreme as this, but trauma does. I mean, I feel like things don't really ever go away. I think things just kind of become easier to deal with as you get older, as you get smarter, as you evolve as a human being. And that was always kind of that was always the gist of this film to me. And it goes back to what you were saying, Lucé, about how the movie doesn't get off on it being this rape revenge movie. It's definitely about that. It's definitely about trauma and about dealing with it and how it fucks people up. And some people don't ever, can never recover from it. So that's I just wanted to give that I just wanted to say that about the film.
I agree, and just to like again, when it comes to this pick, I'm looking at it from like 2021 perspective, and like the Halloween scene, which I'm about to get into. It's kind of dated, so you can kind of chuckle at it and laugh a little bit like when watching it, because there's a certain darkness to it, but at the same time it's like 1981. Like, and you're like, all right, there's some, it's not supposed to be funny, but you can kind of look at it and be like, all right, this is kind of silly. Now, before I get into like, there's a specific scene, I love the way they shot it and the way it looks. I want to describe this Halloween party, and this goes back to what I just said about stuff kind of being a little unintentionally funny. So first off, there's this like 70s style jazz group performing like an instrumental track the entire time. I love it too. It's super duper catchy, and it goes on forever. and what's great about it is it's the end credits song too. And keep in mind, this is like the last 10 minutes of the movie where this all happens. Yeah. So it's just funny how they were like, you know what? That song is fucking catchy. I'm going to use it as the end credit song.
It's a really good mood setter for that scene because it's such like a free-form, noisy jazz track that's playing. And it sets it up so perfectly.
And the band, they're like into it. Like they're playing their heart outs. They're fucking going in. And I love how there's like all these people dancing like super aggressively to the song too. Like they're just all in like these colorful costumes, and I actually put together a little list of some of the costumes you see, and they're just like, there's this one dude dressed up as a hunchback, and he's just like swinging his arms and he's fucking going crazy, and I'm like, that dude's having a fucking ball. like he probably was having a great time on set, and he was just going in.
Just happy to be here.
He probably didn't get peace, probably just an extra. They didn't pay him jack shit. He was just like, yo, I'm going to dress up as this hunchback and fucking go in. So it is when you're watching the movie, you can't help but chuckle. Like when you see
his costume
like
from
that.
home.
Yeah.
He like brought it with him.
And some of the other costumes that are in that room, like some of the other people at the party, you have like a bride, you have like this like ghoul, a witch, a cowboy. But my favorite has got to be this one dude who's dressed up as Mr. Met, who's the New York Mets mascot.
I was wondering about that.
Yeah. And you could tell it's like a homemade version of Mr. Met, and that's what I love about it. I also love, it's not really random because they are in New York, and in the 80s, the Mets were a huge team. They actually won the World Series a few years later. But I just love how there's just like this random dude dressed up as Mr. Met, like jamming out to the music. And it's funny because when all like the chaos happens, he vanishes. I don't think you really see him. So I was like,
Mr. Met knows where the door is.
Mr. Met got the fuck out of there. He was like, I'm out of here, dude. But then there's also like some really great decorations. Like you see spiders and cobwebs, and you see the that classic skeleton that I think we all have or have. I feel like we've all had that just full body skeleton.
Yeah, the jointed.
Yes, and the owls and all that stuff. And I just love that. And the party itself just looks like an old school like New York Halloween party like I went to as a kid. Like it just feels like in an apartment building, you know, people just, you know, minus the live band. Like when I was growing up, it was like someone would just like blast.
Yeah, but that's like a fancy ass apartment.
Yeah, it was supposed to be like this guy who, because I believe the party is it's her boss's like loft, but still just the whole setup of it being in an apartment, cramped. Everyone's kind of just fucking having a great time drinking and hanging out.
Yeah, and
I just love that setup. So to get to the actual scene that I love like in this movie, Thana, who by the way is dressed as a nun, she kills her creepy boss. So he like takes her to this like upstairs area in his apartment, and he tries to like have his way with her, and she shoots him and kills him because again, Miss 45. She heads back downstairs to the party, and this is where a massacre shooting begins, and she just starts shooting all the people dancing and all the people at the party, and everything is slowed down. So like all the frantic people, everything's in just slow motion.
I love it.
There's a strobe light going off, And one of my favorite shots in this scene is her, I believe she's about to shoot one of the guys in the band. Slow motion, she raises her gun and she's standing in front of this huge spider web with like spiders and bats on it. And she's holding the gun out and she shoots the guy. But yeah, the whole sequence just has like a shit ton of Halloween atmosphere. And it's strange because the rest of the movie doesn't. Like you'd never tell it takes place in October. Like being from the city, being from New York, you know, when you're in Manhattan and it's October, it doesn't always feel like Halloween. Like it's kind of just concrete and you don't see fall leaves and you don't see that.
Right.
But there are buildings and establishments that do decorate.
Definitely.
But you don't see
Absolutely.
any of that in the movie. So I just love how it was like Abel Ferrara chose to just have a Halloween party at the end, and that the final scene in the film, and I don't want to get into how it ends exactly because I don't want to spoil it, but to end the movie at a Halloween party and her dressed up as a nun and just this massacre that unfolds, and going back to what we just talked about, how you feel sympathetic for her, but at the same time, at this point, you're just kind of like, she's lost it. Like,
Yeah.
she's completely
Exactly what
lost
happened.
it.
Well, the slow motion really makes you see each death. Where there's a lot of movies with that kind of a chaotic scene, you would see really quick edits and really sped up, and the director would kind of lean into the chaos. But Ferrera's choice to slow it down makes you see each person get shot, which I think is really challenging to watch, and I think it's really sad. And even just watching the clip of it instead of the whole movie today, I was like, oh, just this scene on its own is, and it's not super gory or anything, but the slowness, it's so tragic, and you really see each person die, and you're just like,
yeah,
fuck.
it's pretty brutal. It's a brutal
Yeah.
scene.
And speaking of like the intimacy of watching each person get shot, there's that one final one that sticks out to me is the guy that's, I guess, dressed as like a bride or something, and they're just staring at each other, and it's prolonged.
And these are all innocent people, by the way. Like,
Right.
Yes.
So you think like there's a glimpse, oh, maybe she's not going to shoot him, and he has that kind of like look on his face, like, you know, like, you're really going to shoot me? I'm not even doing anything. And then
Right, and a
she
bride
does.
is like innocence, white, right?
Right.
Like the white dress, and
I
like
didn't
there's
even
like
think
a
of that.
pure
That's
virginity thing to it.
100%.
and again, it's really dark, but I just think they nailed what a Halloween party looked
Oh,
and
for
felt
sure.
like, you know, in New York in the 80s. Like, that's
Especially
what
the
they looked
80s.
like. And that's mostly what I'm focusing on. I'm not really focusing on the fucking brutality of what she's doing, because it is twisted and just kind of like, again, looking at it from I almost changed my pick because of recent events, but I was like, you know, shootings and things like that are relevant now. And it's sad
Always
to think
relevant
that,
in
yeah,
American
like, it's
society.
just, yeah, always, you're right. And it's just sad, you know, again, watching it and to see that, like, these people were just having a good time. And in the middle of a Halloween party, and this crazy shit happens. And, you know, it's dark, but again, you can chuckle here and there because there are elements of this Halloween party.
Oh yeah, it's
that
a
are
product,
pretty,
and also
pretty
the
silly.
movie is a product of its time.
Yes,
So 100%.
100%.
Now let me ask you two a question. Would you, because this gets lumped into a horror movie category all the time, would you say this is a horror movie?
Nah.
No,
Exploitation movie.
I don't. I completely agree.
yeah.
It is not a horror movie.
it's a rape revenge movie, and it's an exploitation movie. It's very specific. I think people get the repulsion of horror sort of tied up with the upsettingness of extreme violence. And I don't think that all violent movies are naturally horrific, because horror has to have a repulsion level that comes from deeper than just like, this is terrible. You know, I mean, how many dramas have that kind of thing? I don't think anytime that there's a mass shooting in a movie that it's a horror movie. It's a horrific, but there has to be a supernatural element, I think, at least, or something, not supernatural necessarily, but something outside of our current reality.
I agree.
That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
It's not a horror film at all. This is.
I don't think so either. I was just.
I
It's
could see where-
horrific, but yeah,
if this is it's horrific, yeah, but it's not. I could lump this up with like I Spit on Your Grave or
Yeah.
like Thriller that's kind of, and even those movies, like a movie like Thriller, they called her One Eye, is a little more.
is even worse to watch.
Yeah, Thriller's even worse, but I feel like that one exploits other stuff in it. But I feel like this is a little more tasteful in its execution.
Yeah.
I think that Ferrera's really thoughtful in this movie.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't feel like cheap thrills to me at all. I think all of it's very intentional. But I want to say about the Halloween scene, one thing you didn't mention that I'm obsessed with and I really liked when I was watching the final scene again is there is an incredible display of streamers at this party. Like, I don't know how many of you have used Halloween streamers at parties before. They are so difficult to work with. It is not an easy decor choice. And in movies, they always have them like perfectly taut, you know, in the black and orange, like wrapped together and like from floor to ceiling. I have tried that before and lost my damn mind. So the set deck, I mean, they did a great job. It's floor to ceiling streamers and like there's no corner of that Halloween party that doesn't have something Halloween-y, which is just like very pleasing. Again, like, yes, the things that are happening are horrific. If we focus on the Halloween aspect of it though, man, successful. Like I wanted to be there, but before the shooting happened, you know, I was like, I would go to this party too, but I would leave with Mr. Met. You know,
funny thing you mentioned about the decorations and like just the set decoration. Like, funny thing with me is like I have in my first feature, it ends towards the end. There's a Halloween party, and the streamers themselves, we bought a bunch and decided not to use them because we were like, where the fuck are we going to put these? They're a pain in the ass to put up.
They tear.
You can't just put them up with tape. They tear, they fall. So I remember, like, at the end of the night, we were there for like 12 hours.
Of course.
And we were done shooting, and we're taking the decorations down. I think I had them all in a bag. I remember sticking all the, like, cutout ones, and I had, like, skulls and things, like, and bats, and shoving them in a bag, and then realizing, like, oh, yeah, I had all these streamers. I forgot, like, 12 hours ago we didn't put them up. And I think I still have them packaged in a box somewhere because I was like, we just didn't want to, like, deal with, like, the pain in the ass of putting them all up on the set. It was... I agree with you. They're cool looking, and in this movie they did a great job with them. But in reality, big pain in the ass.
No, there's so many things when you watch Halloween movies where they have parties where you're like, that's not a thing. People don't decorate like that. Like there's just like as Halloween people, where you're like, it's much harder to execute this type of thing. And I love decorating, but like I also have a bunch of streamers that I bought for a party years ago that I got so furious at when I was trying to put them up that they just live in the bottom of my Halloween box now. So I'm like, someday maybe I'll use these for something, but they feel bad on the hands too. It's a bad touch.
Yeah.
It's like weirdly sticky and dry, which I don't understand how you do that, but it's gross.
It's like a super rough toilet paper. Like that's orange and black.
I'm like, all you've got going for you is the color, and it's not enough.
Are you deaf? Man, I'm the deafest brother on this block. You're deaf? That's right. I think Blade Brown is the biggest asshole on the planet. Oh. Hey! You're not deaf? Man, if you don't stop dissing me, I'm gonna kick you in your mouth.
My pick, and it's a little more lighthearted than Louis', is
Sorry, guys.
It's Class Act from 1992, directed by Randall Miller, and I didn't know this. It's a retelling of Mark Twain's story, The Prince and the Pauper. So I did not know that. That was interesting. It was an interesting little thing I saw on the internet. So there you go. It stars hip hop duo Kid and Play, Karen Parsons from Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Dougie Doug, and Thomas Michael Ford, aka Tommy from Martin. And now I just have to say this: Tommy plays a drug dealer in this movie, like a really like crappy goon, and. Ever since I was a kid, I always because I watch Martin all the time, so I'm just like, yo, he's such a fucking asshole in this movie. Yeah. Like, he's nothing like his character in Martin. So I was always like, yo, Tommy's an asshole.
But he was just Tommy to you, no matter what the role was. It was just, that's fucking Tommy. He's an asshole.
Oh, man. So, all right. So I'm gonna break this down for everybody. So Duncan Pinderhughes is ready to graduate high school and move on to Harvard University, which is obviously a play on Harvard University. But despite having a 4.0 GPA, he needs to pass physical education to be accepted. Then comes ex-con Michael Blade Brown. Blade Brown. Don't they, in the movie, don't they always, like, put that in there? Blade Brown.
Blade Brown, yeah.
Along comes Michael Blade Brown, who has been recently released from jail and must follow parole orders to graduate from high school. A mix-up occurs where Blade and Duncan's photos get swapped on their school records, and Blade ends up in gifted classes, and Duncan in less paid attention to classes with, air quotations, bad kids. The two come to an agreement where Duncan will pass the classes for Blade, and Blade will teach him how to be less geeky. That's my interpretation of it. And I wrote in parentheses LOLs with a Z. We're introduced to our boy Tommy, aka actually his name obviously it's not Tommy.
It's not Tommy.
If his name was just Tommy in every movie.
We're introduced to a jerk named Wedge who gets jealous of Duncan, really Blade, and tells a local drug dealer / jerk this creates a beef and all kinds of hijinks occur, especially in a wax museum.
Dun, dun, dun.
I just want to say I've always loved the name Duncan Pinderhughes.
Absolutely.
I think I don't know if you remember this, Dave.
They call him
one time we
Pinderpuss.
were just texting each other, and I just randomly texted you Duncan Pinderhughes for no reason because I was watching Class Act. This was
amazing.
like years ago.
It's amazing.
I just always liked that name, Duncan Pinderhughes.
It's great.
And he loves
and
to
I love
shop
Blade
at
Brown
Sears,
too,
right, or something like that.
Yeah.
Is it He's like, this is the. I remember there's a scene where I think Blade Brown's making fun of his wardrobe, and he's like, "This is like on like the rack at Sears or something." I forget. It's
great.
The characters in this movie are amazing. They're just great.
It's great.
I love them.
So in particular, this wax museum scene, Mink has had it with Wedge. And Mink is about to kill Wedge when Wedge tells him Blade is stealing his money, and Mink decides to go find Blade. They find them, and they chase them into what appears to be a shut-down wax museum. Throughout this sequence, Wedge and Mink keep mistaking all the wax characters as the wrong people, and they both do it interchangeably. So, like, they see the host of Jeopardy, and he says, "Oh no, that's not so and so. That's who's the guy that hosts Wheel of
Pat
Fortune?"
Sajak.
Pat Sajak.
Oh, Wheel of Fortune.
He's like, it's Pat Sajak.
Pat Sajak.
And
I've
then,
been
like,
waiting for my moment.
he sees someone. He's like, it's Willie. He's like, oh, there. He goes, oh, that's Willie Nelson. He goes, that's not Willie Nelson. That's Colonel Sanders. And it's not either one of them. So they do it throughout the entire scene. So they like just keep messing up these people, all these wax these wax museum characters. So in this particular scene, there is what appears to be a haunted house looking themed part of the wax museum. And now what goes hand in hand with Halloween?
Haunted houses.
A haunted house. There you go. So that's why this is my choice. So this scene has always stuck with me as a kid, and technically not Halloween. It 1000% reminds you of Halloween when you watch this.
I agree.
So you have all these characters running through this scene like a Scooby-Doo episode. Like they're all scared, they're all screaming, they're all, and the ambience itself really is like it could fill up a Halloween night instantly. It's really portrayed really well in this film. And I mean, you have everything from zombies with oozing eyes to hunchbacks to moving gravestones. I mean, the whole thing is as a haunted house I would walk through. So I mean, like I was like, yeah, this is, and it's always stuck with me. Like I don't know if any of you guys can answer this, but this was always on TV. Like it was always on, and anytime it was on, I would watch this. Like Class Act's on, I'm watching it. So
it was always playing on HBO. I remember as a kid, it was always on HBO, and that's how I remember seeing it. I was like maybe like 6 or 7 when I watched it, and Just like you, it was like one of those movies like that, and Just One of the Guys was always on. I
Always
remember growing
on.
up when I was a kid.
Always on.
I wonder if that's how I missed it, because I didn't have cable as a kid. So it's like, if it's not on like the big four, then I'm not seeing it. And
I mean,
I never
that's fair.
heard of this movie. I can't believe I missed out on it. It sounds
That's
amazing.
fair. Oh, it's so worth your time. I promise you.
I love the clip that you sent, and I agree, the atmosphere.
So, and another favorite part of this scene for me is there's this very interesting take on Jason Voorhees / Michael Myers hybrid statue that is just stabbing itself in the head repeatedly, and everybody that walks by it gets scared. But I actually thought it looked a lot like the Splatterhouse guy too, the video game.
The design of that wax figure is
awesome.
so odd. I remember it's awesome looking, but as a kid, I remember first things first. Why does Jason have long hair? He has,
That's what I'm
long
saying.
hair.
Like, they probably had to create this hybrid of two horror icons.
Yeah, they don't have the rights.
Right, exactly.
Why is he stabbing himself in the head? He's got like one hand on his belly, and then he's just stabbing
You know,
himself.
It might be an actor. I was looking at it because I was
It
watching
does
it. I'm
look
like,
like
it
it,
might actually be an actor doing that, which is
Yeah.
still fine with me. But
it looks creepy, and I remember as a kid being like, not scared of it, but like freaked out. Like, that doesn't look like Jason, but it's supposed to be Jason.
Right.
What the fuck is it? Because when you're a kid, you don't know what the hell you're watching, so
because-
you're just like,
because it's
I know
wearing,
hockey
like-
mask mean Jason.
right, because it's wearing like the Clark Griswold version of
Yes.
the Jason
Yeah.
man, like the hockey mask. And it's
Like
got
a
long
real
hair.
hockey mask.
Right, but then it's wearing a jumpsuit like Michael Myers, so that's why I'm calling it a hybrid,
Yeah.
because it's like literally like both characters. But then it also looks
Jason
like
That's
Myers.
so funny. It reminds me of like the unlicensed characters of that are like along Hollywood Boulevard, where it's like you're wearing a costume and you're supposed to be SpongeBob, but it's like an unlicensed costume. So like,
It's like
the
it's
eyes are
bootlegs.
small and they're close together. You're like Sponge Dave.
It's
You're
great.
just like, oh, it's disturbing because it's not the real thing. So your brain wants
I
it to
love
be
stuff
real,
like
but
that.
it's not. So you're like wandered into a parallel universe where like this is the serial killer that's famous. It makes it scarier in a way.
Close enough not to get sued.
Yes, exactly.
So, again, this scene has always stuck out to me. And not just the Halloween part, but the entire wax museum scene. It's very out of nowhere, especially in this movie. Like it really does come out of nowhere. But and also it looks like it's abandoned on the street when they walk into it because there's graffiti all over the doors and on the walls. So it doesn't quite make sense. But maybe the person that the guy that directed this movie like loved Halloween, so he's like, let me put something in there that shows my love for Halloween. But I feel this scene it really does always did remind me of Halloween. So that's why I felt it was fair that I felt it was fair to use this as an example. So.
As a kid, it was always my favorite scene from the movie. Like, I love,
it's
as
great.
an adult now, watching it back, I love the movie. Like, I love the whole movie, and I get all the jokes now, because as a kid, there's certain jokes you don't understand. But I remember always loving this scene with all the monsters and the Jason. And, again, going back to that fake bootleg Jason, I love that there's, like, sitting next to him while he's killing himself, and they just look over to him like, what the fuck? Like, they're just
But everybody gets
confused.
scared. That's the funny
Yeah.
part. Everyone that goes by is afraid of it.
It is a great scene, and it's a great movie, honestly. It's probably like, I love House Party, but I honestly think Class Act is like toe-to-toe. Like, they're both just great, fun movies.
Class Act is a movie I can confidently place in a list of others that was always on TV. Like, for instance, like you were saying, this was always on. Texas Chainsaw Massacre: The Next Generation with Matthew McConaughey was always on. Like, these movies, like, there was always like this little list of films that was always playing, and I would always watch them. So, the movie is full of quotables. And I'm hoping my bud over here, Lou, is gonna put some of those quotables in this episode.
You know I will. You know I will.
And if there was if there was ever a movie that defined the '90s, this is certainly one of them.
That actually reminds me, something I didn't say with Ed Wood that I love is there's a scene where they're in a spook house, is what they called it at the time, but like a dark house, a horror haunted ride, which I absolutely loved when I was a kid. At like the county fair was like very big in my town, and like the state fair. And so I loved those scary, like you jump in them and it takes you through the different rooms and like stuff jumps out at you. And I really enjoyed watching that scene from Class Act because I was just like, oh, this is like that other great scene in Ed Wood.
Yeah.
And it's so, there's
Same
just
reason.
something about,
Yeah.
like those haunted, the wax museums, the like scary part of a wax museum, a haunted house, the dark rides. They're also nostalgic because like sometimes, haunted houses now you can go to ones that are really fucked up. But like I kind of like the ones that are like, boo, they're like
same.
medium scary.
Absolutely.
Because I'm like, I'm not trying to have like a traumatic experience as much as I just want to be like lightly surprised. So I love the like gentle scares of like a wax museum or a dark ride. And I think that even that scene in Ed Wood has a Halloween element to it because you're seeing like ghosts and skeletons and witches. And it's an interesting scene too because he's revealing that he likes to cross-dress to
Yes.
the new woman that he's dating. And so there's some kind of cool I don't know how, I'm trying to think of how to say it, but like, you're hiding something inside of you and you're scared to say it. And he's in this spook house and it's like, he just wants to be himself. So there's a lot of interesting like symbolism going
Yeah.
on in that
It's
scene
a
as well. I
dynamic
think is
scene.
fun.
Yeah, it's a very dynamic
it's really
scene.
dynamic. Yeah, definitely. So I love that both of our films have that going for it.
Right, because it's not exactly Halloween, but it's stuff that goes hand in hand with Halloween, and to me that was just as good. So
Exactly.
and I completely agree with you on the haunted houses that are like silly and like not like on the PG-13 level of scare, because those are fun. Like when you get to these stupid these X-rated things where people are throwing up on you and cutting you and why?
No, thank you.
I'm good.
I know. I'm like, have the people going to these never had a bad thing happen to them? Because like, I don't. Just living as a woman is like scary enough. Like, I don't need to be alone in a dark room thinking a man might attack me. Like, I'm already scared of that.
It's ridiculous.
I'll never understand the extreme haunt culture, but
I'm sure we're gonna
Why?
cover that at some point.
Oh yeah. Not here to judge it. It's just not for me, and I don't
absolutely.
understand it. If that makes sense.
No, I don't think a lot of people can.
You're not going to believe the first picture I ever saw. It was your friend's. Dracula.
Oh, that's incredible. That's the first picture I ever saw.
That is incredible. I had to sleep with the lights on for a week.
I had to sleep with the lights on for a month, but I never missed a Lugosi picture after that one.
A few years ago, I actually saw him do Dracula live. It was much scarier in person.
Oh, we're stuck.
So that was some of our favorite Halloween scenes from non-Halloween movies. Lucé, thank you so much for being on. Where can people find you?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for having me. This was so much fun. I never wanted to stop talking about this. Everybody can find me on Twitter and Instagram at LTB Comedy, Lucé Tomlin Brenner, LTB Comedy. And then you can follow the podcast on Instagram at It's Always Halloween. I also have a Patreon where I do movie nights with people. We do show movies and I discuss the film. And I also release ghost stories with original soundscape behind them. So that's all on Patreon. Patreon.com/It's Always Halloween for extra goodies. And you guys, I didn't even talk about this, but I'm about to start a new film. It's called Surprise. And I'm going to be in pre-production. I'm in pre-production now, and I'm going to be producing it this summer. Really excited about it. So everybody keep your eyes on that. I'm going to be announcing the fundraiser in a few weeks. So I'm really pumped. If you love dark comedies where a lot of people get murdered, then check out my next film, Surprise.
And be sure to subscribe and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Haunted Hangover.
And if you can rate and review us, that'd be greatly appreciated.
And remember, the best cure for a hangover is
More
booze.
booze.
later, guys.